up, everybody? This is Chris Surratt bringing you another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of all your vehicles. On today's show, it's just going to be chock full of conversations about my favorite parent company of the automotive industry, Stellantis, as they continue to show us how they diabolically run some of the best U.S. automotive companies into the ground, right in front of our faces. Now, I've talked relentlessly about Stellantis, and most of it's been extremely negative. They have been failing us ever since the UAW contract, when it comes to factory layoffs and lack of market share and advancements in EV. They have set us back when it comes to the automotive industry in the United States of America. And it's crazy because last year they had record sales. Everything was on the up and up. So, on today's show, we're going to talk about some moves that Stellantis is making over in Mexico. Weird, because after that we're going to talk about some of their latest layoffs here in America lately at the Warren, Michigan plant where they make Ram 1500s. That's going to become important when we start this show. And last but not least, we're going to check out one of my favorite content creators as he talks about Stellantis and the future of Stellantis, because I want to make sure I'm a new content creator, and I want to make sure that you guys are getting the best information about the automotive industry possible. And this guy is one of the best, one of the most informed, so we're going to check him out. All right, first up, we're going to talk about some moves that Stellantis is making overseas. Stellantis expanding Mexico operations to make more Ram pickups, report says. Stellantis has been building additional factory space next to its existing plant in Saltillo, Mexico, the report said, citing people familiar with the matter. This is a story from October 16th from Reuters. Chrysler parent Stellantis is expanding its factory complex in northern Mexico to build Ram 1500 pickup trucks. The Wall Street Journal reported on Tuesday. Stellantis has been building additional factory space next to its existing plant in Saltillo, Mexico, the report said, citing people familiar with the matter. Two roughly half-kilometer long, 1.31 mile long buildings have been constructed in the past several months, according to satellite images reviewed by the newspaper. Stellantis has been making other variants of the Ram pickup trucks in Mexico and that no other announcements have been made about the production of Ram 1500. That's going to change shortly. The French-Italian automaker said in a statement it recently disclosed plans to invest more than $235 million at the Sterling Heights assembly plant in Michigan to build future electric versions of the pickup. Stellantis will continue to make Ram trucks at its Michigan plant, it said. It is not clear if the planned factory space in Saltillo would be used to make battery or gas-powered versions of the Ram trucks, the WSJ report said. The report on Mexico plans comes as the UAW is eyeing multiple U.S. strikes against Stellantis, alleging it had failed to keep the commitments it made in last year's contract signed after a 6-week strike that costed about 750 million euros, 816.90 million in profit. In August, Stellantis announced plans to lay off as many as 2,450 factory workers from its Warren truck assembly plant outside of Detroit after ending production of the Ram 1500 Classic truck. Interesting stuff coming out of Stellantis as it comes to their Mexico plant. It's really weird that they're continuing to advance at these factories over in Mexico when we have all of these Stellantis factories here in America that are losing workers left and right. What moves in Mexico could they be making that they can't make here? Is it cheaper labor in Mexico? Sure. Is that the reason that you're doing this? Because I'm pretty sure that was talking about Ram 1500 and the makings of Ram 1500s. Isn't that what they're making over at the Warren plant over in Michigan? I'm pretty sure that's what they're making over at the Warren plant in Michigan. And this, my friends, is what I'm trying to make y'all understand, that Stellantis is just a massive corporate raider. It is not an American startup company. It is a parent company between Peugeot and some American companies. And American companies are just a part of it, a small part of it as it were. And now we see that Stellantis really has diabolically set a precedent as how they are going to inside job destroy these automakers and then sell them off to the highest bidder. I'm telling you, that is what's going to happen. But let's continue to our next story, because we were hearing that there's new layoffs at the Warren plant in Michigan. Crazy, huh? From Stellantis, as we've just talked about them building new buildings at their plant in Mexico. Weird, but let's check it out.
Stellantis starts layoffs at Warren plant, says more cuts are coming. The carmaker first announced in August that layoffs were imminent. Several Stellantis brands are struggling with massive inventories across the U.S. The cuts come at the same time Stellantis battles with the United Auto Workers Union. Stellantis is axing 1,100 jobs in Warren, Michigan, and has revealed that more job cuts are on the cards on the back of declining sales, compounding a slew of recent issues for the car-making giant. The company started cutting jobs at the Warren truck assembly plant over the weekend after it stopped building the Ram 1500 Classic. These layoffs were first announced in August. Some more senior employees could be reassigned to other Stellantis plants. In a statement, a Stellantis spokeswoman said the company will be implementing indefinite layoffs of represented employees across its footprint. It's unclear how many more job cuts Stellantis is planning, NPR notes. According to head of insights at Edmunds, Jessica Caldwell, Stellantis has made missteps in the U.S. in selling fancier and more expensive vehicles, in particular for the Jeep brand. Jeep is sort of that rugged, do-anything, go-anywhere, very basic American brand, she says. Now they're expensive, they're flashy, and it seems like it's kind of missing the mark in terms of where people are right now. Several Stellantis brands are battling with burgeoning inventories in the United States. At the start of June, Jeep and Ram both had at least twice the industry average of inventory, and these aren't the only brands struggling with a glut of supplies. Alfa Romeo, Chrysler, and Dodge all have inventories well beyond the industry average.
All companies that have been slow to advance themselves when it comes to the future of the auto industry, specifically EV vehicles. We have seen lesser problems with Ford. They have the Mach-E. There are some other places that have EV vehicles, but of course, Dodge, Jeep, Chrysler, they have just been slow to advance when it comes to that. They've tried to stick to a base model, as it were, for a long time. They've tried to continue to base their future all on this nostalgia of vehicles, which is a problem, of course, because the prices have skyrocketed to the point where people are paying six figures for a vehicle. Nobody wants to do that. So now, with all the better priced vehicles, more future friendly vehicles, more EV vehicles that are better priced, they're being kicked out of the market share because they cannot sell a good product at a good price and compete with all these new sellers. Let's continue.
The Dodge Hornet and Jeep Grand Wagoneer were recently revealed to be the slowest selling new vehicles in the country, and both have a 428-day supply. Stellantis is also in the midst of a bitter dispute with the United Auto Workers, UAW union. It recently filed 8 new lawsuits against the union and 23 of its local chapters after threats from union representatives to initiate strikes in response to the automaker's delay in making planned investments at its Belvidere, Illinois plant.
And let's face it, that's the start of the problem. When they got into cahoots with Sean Fain and he started lobbying for them when it came to the UAW against Stellantis, and they gave them all those. You allowed this to happen, people. And that's the horrible thing about it. We kind of, I spoke about this in length, and I'm a news show, so nobody knows about me and nobody checks me out, and my word is for naught. But the problem started with the UAW contract started all of this. It put them in a position where they knew that they couldn't afford all these things. They couldn't afford to pay these amounts. They couldn't afford for people to only work a certain amount of days out of the week. They couldn't afford it. So hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to give y'all what y'all want. You know what's going to happen a couple of months later? We're going to start firing y'all because we can't afford y'all anymore. And that's exactly what happened. In droves. We've saw so many massive layoffs at Stellantis plants over the last couple of months. I've reported on it weekly after weekly after weekly. It is hurting Michigan to an umpteenth degree. It's hurting the whole Midwest. I am from the Midwest. I have family that work at these plants. I have family that work at the automotive parts industries that feed these plants. They're all scared. They're all worried about their futures. Because Stellantis has seen fit to destroy it. And I can't even blame it all on Stellantis when UAW started and Sean Fain's crooked buck started this. He started this and Stellantis just rolled with it. I'm not at all surprised about what is happening. I've talked about it for a long time. As I watch all these layoffs, and I continue to say, when it comes to politics, where are all these automotive jobs that they're talking about that here? I've seen umpteenths of 80, 90,000 layoffs in the last couple of months in specific factories, specifically in Michigan. Massive layoff amounts of people, tens of thousands, with nothing in sight. No new factories coming up. I ain't seen no new factories being built, and I lobby for that. I am in the mindset that if we want to continue to survive when it comes to this automotive industry, we're going to have to, specifically Stellantis, and which it probably won't be Stellantis for much longer, but what we'll see is Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep partnering with other companies. Other companies probably just buying them out. Because I honestly believe that Stellantis is just playing the role of a corporator now. They want to keep their English companies, and they're going to get rid of these American ones. They're going to just sell them off. You know who's going to buy them? Chinese companies going to buy them. BYD. BYD is going to buy Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and it's going to incorporate it. You know why? So they can sell their EV vehicles here. And I'm telling you, that is so bad for the. It is so bad for the U.S. market. It is so bad for the U.S. market. It'd be good if they put a lot of money into it, and then of course they started not only putting money into the factories for the Chrysler, Dodge, Jeeps and building them back up. And then, of course, brought some BYD factories over here so we can start working on those. That'd be great. I would love to see that. That would be a fantastic future. But right now, all we see is destruction. All we see is Stellantis destroying these companies. All we see is brands that we've loved. Dodges. The Jeep Wranglers of the world. The Ram 1500s of the world going away. Just completely going away. No innovation. No EV models. We hope for that in the future, but does it look like that's going to happen now? Why aren't the EV models of these vehicles being built in these factories that are losing these employees? Why are the factories that are having all these massive layoffs not the ones working on this new technology for these new companies? Why are we seeing Stellantis build buildings at their factories in Mexico when the factories here in the U.S. are suffering? I have completely told y'all for such a long time how bad Stellantis was. I've watched this in real time and I've spoken about it in real time. And it continues to happen. So, what we're going to do right now is we're going to have one of the best content creators out there. He's going to speak about Stellantis and the whole situation, and I want y'all to check this out. Very few people can wax poetically like this young man. This is Aton Daniels. Let's pull this up real quick.
Let's talk about the auto industry and why Stellantis is struggling. I seen this pop up on CNBC and I wanted to have this conversation. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notification. We going in overtime today, y'all.
You may or may not have heard the name Stellantis, but you certainly know at least some of its 14 brands. 4 of them American. Stellantis is the 5th largest automaker in the world. It had a banner year in 2023, but 6 months later, the company is struggling. After hitting a high in March 2024, shares have fallen by more than half, and shareholders are losing enthusiasm.
The whole discussion on Stellantis has basically collapsed.
Somebody said, how do you get access to the Patreon? The link is pinned to the top of the chat and it's in the description of the video.
We're not talking about free cash flows. We're not talking about long-term EV strategy. We're not talking about market position.
Nobody wants that Dodge Dart. Nobody wants, let me see this.
We're not talking about free cash flows. We're not talking about long-term EV strategy.
Let me ask y'all a question, because I literally just put in a call. I think I'm ordering the Challenger, the Hellcat, the Demon. I don't really like the name of that, but I think I'm going to order one just to keep it for nostalgic purposes. Because I think that the value of them is going to go up over a period of time. How many of y'all want that? That's the electric version of the Charger that's coming out. It's being released now.
Hell no.
It's the electric version. I do like electric cars.
No, and that's the whole point. They built their brand on this nostalgia of the muscle car, this nostalgia of combustion engines. And that's the problem. And they had to put fake sounds in his vehicle to feed into your nostalgic side on buying this car. It's just the massive idea that they desire us to move into the EV future is crazy, but it's a necessity. But Dodge, they just not doing it that well.
But I think they charging like $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 for that?
Yes.
$70,000, $80,000, $90,000 for a Dodge electric car? People want choices. They don't want to be forced into it.
And that's what we're talking about. That's exactly what we're talking about, because with the Polestars, the Fiskars, the Teslas, the Derek Baileys out there, there's so much choices. There's so many choices when it comes to these EVs, and they're priced so much better. You can get an EV for $30,000, $40,000 right now. There's Teslas available for that amount, and Dodge and Jeep gonna come out with their EVs costing over $80,000. That's not competing with the market share that you're losing, because the market share you're losing is because your prices are too high. You have to innovate better. Your technology's got to be better. You got to be able to compete price wise with these other EV companies, and they're not doing a good job of it. They're just not.
We're not talking about market position or the China Elite Motor joint venture. We're only talking about how much will it cost the company to get rid of the US inventory.
As a result of the disappointing US sales, profits have fallen by nearly 50% and market share is down.
It is an understatement to say that H1 2024 results were disappointing and humbling.
The dealer body, and evidently the UAW as well, believes we're on a bad track that was all self-inflicted.
On September 30th, 2024, the company slashed its forecasts for full-year profitability and cash flow. The stock plunged nearly 13% by closing. There is mounting pressure on Stellantis' CEO and calls for him to step down. So,
will.
how did Stellantis get to this place, and can it recover?
They already said he will. They've already plotting his. He's just gonna be the scapegoat. Tavares is just gonna be the scapegoat for now. They've already said that he's going to retire in 2026. Why would you plan a retirement like that? They've already said they are looking for a successor. I mean, he's just gonna be a scapegoat. They're like, all the problems are gonna leave when Tavares leave. No.
That right there is so funny. I was talking to a guy as I was coming out of Home Depot, and he noticed me, and he was telling me that he actually worked there. So a lot of people don't know that Chrysler. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of history. Chrysler basically was partnered with or bought by Daimler, right? So Mercedes and all of that, eventually they spun them off, they sold them over there, and then Stellantis wound up picking up Chrysler, which also encompasses Dodge and Ram, okay? That is in Auburn Hills. Auburn Hills is a suburb of Detroit. It is in Metro Detroit. It is not a Detroit automaker. It is a Michigan automaker. That is the headquarters. It's still got the Chrysler sign that's at the top, okay? The interesting thing about that is that I was talking to the guy that was at Home Depot, and he was telling me that he worked in that building, and he said it is a very, very, very hostile workplace. He said you can work in that building and never see people that's over there or over here or over there or so on and so forth, and that, you know, it's segmented and all of that. All of those people that work in that headquarters, a lot of them are already laid off, and they letting them go. I believe that Chrysler, if somebody doesn't buy it from Stellantis, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Dodge, it's all going kapoosh. It is going to be 3 American automakers, not 4, because now the 4th one became Tesla. Tesla's doing really well. They got the best margins. I believe it's only going to be Ford, General Motors, and Tesla. I believe that within a few years, I think that Chrysler is going to completely go out of business. But let's listen to it.
I honestly think that they won't go away. They'll just be rebranded and they'll be purchased by some Chinese company. Probably BYD. I'm telling you, man, BYD is trying to make moves. So I really think BYD is going to come over here, offer Stellantis a pretty penny. They're going to buy Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep. They ain't going to do nothing with them but take over their factories here in America and then, you know, expand their own BYD parts and cars and just make that one of the biggest car dealerships or automakers here in America. It's in the works.
Check out these charts. There's
That's why I'm buying
Stellantis'
the Dodge,
financial results for the
the
first
Charger,
half of
or the
2024.
Challenger.
The stock's full-year performance as of early October. Shares have fallen from a high of $29.51 in March to just above $13. And it's mostly due to poor U.S. sales of its American brands. It isn't the only automaker going through tough times, but it is one that has lost significant market share to its rivals over the last 3 years.
They can't keep
in
the
September,
V8
several officers
because
of
of
Stellantis' National Dealer
requirements in order
Council
to switch
sent an
over to
open
more-
letter to the
more
company
fuel efficient
accusing management of
and
being
less
behind the
emissions going
troubles.
into the air. They can't keep
Dave
the V8.
Kelleher is a Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and Chrysler dealer in Pennsylvania. 3 years ago, dealers like Kelleher were earning profits of about 4.5% of sales, which is strong for the industry. The benchmark is 4%. But now Kelleher says the average is less than 1%.
That's caustic. We have 900
dealers
dealers
are
in the
scared,
country that
too.
are actually losing money and a bunch that are really close to it.
In the same time period, the values of those dealerships have plummeted from 5 to 5.5 times earnings to 1 to 2 times, depending on the dealership's location. Kelleher is selling 100 cars a month, whereas he used to sell about 185. As of mid-September, he had 473 cars on his lot, collectively worth about $27 million. Bear in mind, dealers buy their cars directly from the automaker. Kelleher has been selling these cars his entire career and has seen the ups and downs. This time, he says the troubles are of Stellantis' own making.
Dealer morale's at low. Corporate morale's at an all-time low. So I would suggest that this company, I don't know what their end plan is, because they certainly don't tell us. But
If you guys work at Stellantis, Chrysler, Dodge, or anything like that, I don't care if you work in a plant. I don't care if you work in corporate. I would be looking for another job. I would have been in school. I already told y'all, and the final nail in the coffin, honest to God, The final nail in the coffin was, let me see something real quick. The final nail in the coffin was this UAW contract because it basically priced them out of being able to compete. Nobody is going to be paying $100,000 per truck or $100,000 for a Chrysler or a Dodge or anything like that. And they had to raise the consumer prices for research and development to continue to transition over into electric because the Biden-Harris administration is forcing every automaker to move over to electric. And when they started paying all those workers all of that money, the layoffs was coming. And the minute that they approved that contract, I said that it was over. I said that Sean Fain basically put a nail in the coffin for all Chrysler workers in the United States of America. The only thing that they're going to be able to do is import cars or hopefully sell it over to a larger automaker in which they can share platforms. And then they just going to rebrand or badge everything as a Dodge or a Stellantis. I mean, a Dodge or a Ram or something like that. But nobody wants to pay $80,000 for a Jeep. Nobody wants to pay $90,000 for an electric vehicle. And interest rates is high and people can't even afford to live and stuff anymore. It's not happening, bro. It's not happening. The minute that they signed that UAW contract, it was over. It was completely over for Stellantis here in the United States of America. Nobody want a Dodge Dart rebadged Fiat. Nobody want that. Nobody want It's not happening, bro. It's over.
For 2.5 years, we've explained to them that we think we're on a bad path and nothing's been done to it.
The dealers aren't the only discontent stakeholders. The United Auto Workers Union has been threatening to strike again. And earlier in 2024, Stellantis suppliers were halting production over pricing disputes. The disputes have spilled into the courts.
North America operations were, highly profitable and kind of seen as a little bit of a cash cow. Maybe the idea was it could run itself with not much influence, but it still needed support.
Stellantis has only existed for about 3.5 years. It was created out of a merger of two major automakers, France's Groupe PSA, sometimes known as Peugeot, and Fiat Chrysler, which was itself a merger of two other companies, the Italian maker Fiat and the American Chrysler, a company with a long and tumultuous history.
Chrysler has always been the weakest of the three major
they don't
producers
put no products in there.
in
They
the
only
United
had the
States.
300 in the
It had the
Pacifica.
smallest market share of the Detroit Three, the three major automakers based out of Detroit, Michigan. Here's what volumes look like for the Detroit Three in 2007, 1 year before the financial crisis. By 2009, Chrysler and GM both went bankrupt.
Chrysler will file for bankruptcy after failing to reach a deal with some of its debt holders.
Then came the merger with Fiat.
The continuity of Chrysler was at risk. So whether you like this decision or not, it is the only path that kept Chrysler alive.
It's gone through certainly more than one near-death experience in my lifetime. And it's a testament really to the brains and work ethic of the people at the company that have really pushed Chrysler back to the brink each time.
A revival followed under the leadership of former FCA CEO, the late Sergio Marchionne,
They got him
whose
about it.
turnaround at Chrysler was at times considered miraculous and at others marred by controversy.
He went in and he understood that he needed to make these brands like superstars. So he went into the engineering and he built the entire product portfolio. He found these people that really were terrific, like a Tim Kuniskis, for example, who took Dodge brand and just made Dodge brand vibrant again.
No, I don't think that it was him. I think it was Ralph. Was it Ralph Giles? Ralph Giles? Tim Kuniskis, he the person that they now have put in charge of Chrysler now. It wasn't him. It was Ralph Giles that really reinvigorated from a design lens of what was going on over at Chrysler. Whatever they talking about is nonsense. It was the Ralph dude that absolutely changed Chrysler.
The Jeep, Dodge, and Ram brands all set sales records in 2018. The Ram truck was taking share from its competitors, the F-150 and the Silverado. The Dodge Challenger was a muscle car, a declining segment, and the car itself saw few significant updates over its lifetime. But that didn't matter. It eventually outsold both the Chevrolet Camaro and the Ford Mustang. Despite all the success, Fiat Chrysler's board was long known to be looking for a deal. First with the American GM, then the French maker Renault, and then Peugeot.
Welcome back. Jeep parent company Fiat Chrysler merging with European automaker Peugeot to create the fourth largest automaker in the world.
Peugeot had a strong presence in Europe. The company had already bought GM's Opel and Vauxhall brands. In some sense, it seemed like a natural fit.
The two companies in that sense were already very accustomed to co-developing products together. They knew each other's cultures already because they've been in heavy collaboration for, since the 80s on those commercial vehicles. So culturally, it made sense.
But there was also the opportunity to cut costs and save billions of dollars through synergies, such as sharing parts and platforms. This could also reduce the burden of investing in extremely expensive new technologies like EVs, automated driving, and software. And of course, pay money out to shareholders.
And at first, the market was quite doubtful whether Stellantis could pull off the $5 billion in synergies between the two companies that they had announced.
Jeremy Rogers says, Anton, are you still getting a Cybertruck? I don't know. It's so many different cars that I want, and there's so many cars that I got on order. I don't know if it makes sense. I will say that now they got out like the non-founder series. I don't know. We'll see what happens, bro. We'll see how it plays out. I don't know if I'm going to get one. We'll see. We'll figure it out. And then we'll play it from there. But they basically ran it into the ground. I don't think that it's going to exist as its own independent automaker anymore. I think that the brand is absolutely going to be killed, and I think that it'll be sold off because the value of the name still exists. The Ram name still is great. The Jeep name is still as great. Even Dodge, you can make something out of it, but the fact that they're pushing everybody to go over to EV is going to be a difficult play for a lot of people. So anyway.
Fantastic stuff from Aton. Always a great watch. Please tune in to him. He has a great show, the Millionaire Morning Show, plus the Aton Daniels Show. And he's always has great points. And when it comes to this, he has, of course, he lives in the Midwest, so he has firsthand knowledge about these things. He's been in the automotive industry. He's watched it firsthand. So he's very tuned into it, and just as much as I would like to be. And for me personally, it's just a situation where I really think that the UAW situation put Stellantis in a position where they had to make certain moves when it came to the U.S. portion of their conglomerate, specifically the Jeeps, the Dodges, the Chryslers. And I think their move is just to let them die and then sell them off. That's what it really looks like. I mean, that they haven't put any emphasis into the advancement of the EVs, very little as it were. They've put very little emphasis in marketing or very little emphasis in making sure that they fought for a good contract for their factory employees so they continue to work instead of laying them off. So at this point, everything seems to be in a path of death and destruction for these automakers. No one sees them surviving. They've lost too much market share as it is. And to gain that market share back is going to take so much time that they just do not have. They don't have it. They don't have the time. They don't have the ability. So they're just going to die off. And we can hope, the hope really is that another company scoops them up and revitalizes them. Specifically, or hopefully, a EV company that could not only revitalize the products that they have, but they can move them into the future with the technology that they've already built. And we already know some companies like that. And we know some companies that are going to try that. Because that is the future. And all we can ask, all we as the American people can ask is that the hope is that whoever helps to revitalize this, revitalize it to the point where we can get those jobs we lost back, we can get those opportunities we lost back, and maybe we could get those factories and buildings that this current administration says they've put in really in. All right, my friends, I am Chris Surratt. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe to the show. And I'm out. Peace.